Are you ready to learn with Paddington? You're watching Read and Learn English through a story. Hi everyone, I'm Tanya. This is English with speakayou. And today we are diving into the enchanting world of A Bear Called Paddington. In this video, I'll read a section of this classic story aloud, then we'll pause to unlock all the interesting vocabulary, tricky grammar, and pronunciation secrets. It's the perfect way to boost your reading, listening, vocabulary, and grammar all naturally through a captivating story. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Please look after this bear. Mr. and Mrs. Brown first met Paddington on a railway platform. In fact, that was how he came to have such an unusual name for a bear, for Paddington was the name of the station. The Browns were there to meet their daughter, Judy, who was coming home from school for the holidays. It was a warm summer day, and the station was crowded with people on their way to the seaside. Trains were whistling, taxis were hooting, porters rushing about, shouting at one another, and altogether there was so much noise that Mr. Brown, who saw him first, had to tell his wife several times before she understood. A bear? On Paddington Station? Mrs. Brown looked at her husband in amazement. Don't be silly, Henry. There can't be. Mr. Brown adjusted his glasses. But there is, he insisted. I distinctly saw it, over there, behind those mailbags. It was wearing a funny kind of hat. Without waiting for a reply, he caught hold of his wife's arm and pushed her through the crowd, round a trolley laden with chocolate and cups of tea, past a bookstall and through a gap in a pile of suitcases towards the Lost Property Office. There you are, he announced triumphantly, pointing towards a dark corner. I told you so. Mrs. Brown followed the direction of his arm and dimly made out a small fairy object in the shadows. It seemed to be sitting on some kind of suitcase, and around its neck there was a label with some writing on it. The suitcase was old and battered, and on the side in large letters were the words, Wanted on Voyage. And this is our first stop. We will start with the title of this chapter, and it says, Please look after this bear. To look after is a phrasal verb, and it means to take care of something or someone. It means to be responsible for their well-being. Came to have such an unusual name. This is actually a process or reason by which something acquired a particular characteristic or state. This is like basically asking, how did it happen? Or what's the story behind this? So it's about explaining the origin or development of something. Nowadays, you would ask, how did he get such an unusual name? Or why did he end up with such an unusual name? Next, with crowded with. We have actually crowded with people, but crowded by itself means full of people or things, so much so that there is little space. You can also say packed with or full of, packed with people or full of people. Then on their way, this phrase shows that someone or something is in the process of traveling to the destination. So if you say to a friend, I'm on my way, it basically means that you've left and are currently traveling to where you are going. Whistle. This is a high-pitched sound made by forcing air through a small opening. You can hear, for example, at the football match, a referee blowing a whistle, or, for example, the train. Yeah, from the train you sometimes hear a whistle. Then hoot. This is the sound made by an owl, but here we are talking about taxis, so it is also about the cars when like beep, hoot, hoo, hoo. Yeah, the cars, they hoot their horns. Then a porter. A porter is a person employed to carry luggage or other loads. Although nowadays porters are not very common. Maybe they are common at some luxurious hotels, but basically that's it. Rush about. Rush about. That is to move quickly and often in a hurried, busy, or even disorganized way. So those porters were rushing about. Also, if you're late for something, you might rush about trying to get ready quickly. It also implies panic and urgency. One another used to show that each member of a group does something to or for the other members. It is often interchangeable with each other. All together. All together. That means completely, totally, or also in total. In total. Adjusted his glasses. Adjusted means to move something slightly so that it is in a more comfortable or effective position. And so he adjusted his glasses. If you wear glasses, you know that they may sometimes slip down. It is annoying, so you might adjust them by pushing them back. I used to do that when I was wearing glasses, but now I do that only with my sunglasses. Distinctly, that is in the way that is clear or easy to hear, see, or understand. So if you hear something distinctly, it means there is no confusion, no muddiness, it's very clear. You can also say clearly or plainly. Then catch, hold, off. Here we can see the past form caught, catch, hold of. Catch, hold of. That is to grasp or seize something firmly. Now you can say grab as well. So grabbed her hand or caught hold of her hand. Then we have the sequence of the phrasal verbs describing movement, that is pushed through. Then we have round, past, again through and towards. So pushed through, pushed around, pushed past, pushed towards. First of all, let's deal with push. Push means to apply force. And these prepositions help us to understand how the force was applied. So if we push through something and we mean walking, for example, in this case here, we push through the crowd. We mean that we apply force to move through the crowd. Then we have around. That means that you do this circular motion around the crowd if you don't want to push through. Yeah, then push past. That means that you just go beyond them, like you don't stop by them or anything. You just go, and this thing is left past you, left behind you. And then push towards, that is move in the direction of something. But remember that you apply force to do so. Then trolley laden. Trolley is a small vehicle with 2 or 4 wheels that you push or pull to transport things. And laden means heavily loaded. So here we see that these trolleys, in British English they are trolleys, in American they might say carts. So they carry bags, but they are laden. That means that they are absolutely full with luggage. A gap is an empty space or interval in something continuous. So think about a fence and it is missing a piece. That is a gap. A pile of. Pay attention that we say of. A pile of is a quantity of things heaped together in a more or less tidy way. So imagine books on top of each other. Like, for example, I have here. That is a pile of books. You see, they're like, if I arrange them this way, they're more or less tidy. They are fine, but I usually arrange them even better, like that. I told you so. I told you so. This is an exclamation used to emphasize that one's previous advice or warning has proven to be correct. It is very often annoying. Who likes hearing, I told you so? Next is dimly. This is not brightly, like indistinct light. So if a room is dimly lit, it's not very bright, making it hard to see things clearly. And the opposite is brightly, of course. You can also say poorly lit. The room is poorly lit, or the room is dimly lit. Poorly lit, dimly lit. Then make out a small object. Make out a small object. Make out is a phrasal verb and it has so many meanings, but in this case, it means to be able to see, hear, or understand something with difficulty. So when you make out something in the dark or from a distance, it means you can just barely distinguish it. Or you can just about see or hear it despite the difficulty. Then battered, battered. Battered means damaged by repeated blows or hard use. And we can see that it is used here when talking about a suitcase. And we know what may happen at the airport with a suitcase. I hope it has never happened to you, but it recently happened to my aunt. The last time she came back from her trip, her suitcase was absolutely battered, and then she just decided to buy a new one. Yeah, it usually happens because probably it was dropped a lot, bumped a lot, and there are dents, scratches, scrapes. Yeah, it doesn't look new or shiny anymore. And voyage, voyage. Voyage is a long journey involving travel by sea or in space. Voyage. Pay attention that the stress falls on the first syllable and we get voyage, 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 voyage. Moving on to the next part. Mrs. Brown clutched at her husband. "Why, Henry," she exclaimed, "I believe you were right after all. It is a bear." She peered at it more closely. It seemed a very unusual kind of bear. It was brown in color, a rather dirty brown, and it was wearing a most odd-looking hat with a wide brim, just as Mr. Brown had said. From beneath the brim, two large round eyes stared back at her. Seeing that something was expected of it, the bear stood up and politely raised its hat, revealing two black ears. "Good afternoon," it said in a small, clear voice. Er, good afternoon," replied Mr. Brown doubtfully. There was a moment of silence. The bear looked at them inquiringly. "Can I help you?" Mr. Brown looked rather embarrassed. "Well, no. As a matter of fact, we were wondering if we could help you." Mrs. Brown bent down. "You're a very small bear," she said. The bear puffed out its chest. "I am a very rare sort of bear," he replied importantly. "There aren't many of us left where I come from." "And where is that?" asked Mrs. Brown. The bear looked around carefully before replying. "Darkest Peru. I'm not really supposed to be here at all. I'm a stowaway." "A stowaway?" Mr. Brown lowered his voice and looked anxiously over his shoulder. He almost expected to see a policeman standing behind him with a notebook and pencil, taking everything down. "Yes," said the bear. "I emigrated, you know." A sad expression came into his eyes. "I used to live with my Aunt Lucy in Peru, but she had to go into a home for retired bears." "You don't mean to say you've come all the way from South America by yourself?" exclaimed Mrs. Brown. The bear nodded. "Aunt Lucy always said she wanted me to immigrate when I was old enough. That's why she taught me to speak English." And let's stop here. Let's start with peer at. Peer at. Peer at means to look closely or with difficulty at something. So when you peer at something, you might lean in, squint your eyes, or try hard to see it, perhaps because it's small or far away or unclear. By the way, as an alternative, you can actually say squint at. Squint at. Odd looking odd looking. Odd looking means unusual or strange in appearance. So if something is odd looking, it means it doesn't look like what you expect. So it's a bit peculiar or out of the ordinary. Then a wide brim. A wide brim. So a wide brim is the edge of a hat. And this is the one that goes around and it protects, for example, your face from the sun. Stare back at. Stare back at. It means to look at someone or something for a long time, quite fixated, in response to being looked at. So Mr. and Mrs. Brown were peering at the bear and he stared back at them. Then inquiringly, inquiringly, inquiringly in a way that shows a desire to know something. So that means that their expression or gesture shows they have a question or want more information. So they're like asking without using words. Rather embarrassed. Rather embarrassed. That is feeling a little shy, awkward, or ashamed, especially in a social situation. So if you trip in front of people, you might feel rather embarrassed. It's a mild feeling of discomfort or shame. And rather in this case means quite or a bit. Yeah, quite embarrassed or a bit embarrassed. As a matter of fact, as a matter of fact, as a matter of fact means in reality, actually, and we also use it to introduce a sentence that contrasts with what has been said or with a common belief. We might also use it to introduce some information that might be surprising or to provide a more accurate picture. Like, oh, you think it's cold? As a matter of fact, it's quite warm. It's like actually or in fact. We were wondering if. We were wondering if. It's a polite way to introduce a question or a request. You may say, I was wondering if. Yeah, I was wondering if I could go home early today. Use this phrase to soften the question and make it more polite, because otherwise you might seem or you might come off as rude or quite direct, which in English is not common. Bend down. Bend down. That is to move the top part of your body forwards and downwards. Like, for example, if you need to pick up something from the floor, you bend down. Puffed out. Puffed out his chest. Puffed out. that means to make your chest expand and stick out. You often do it to show that you're proud or that you're confident. So the bear is very proud of himself because we can also see that he says it importantly. He does it importantly. I'm not really supposed to be here. I'm not really supposed to be here. So be supposed to. Be supposed to. That means an expectation or an obligation or a rule or something that is generally believed or intended. Yeah, so this is a phrase that is used about rules or social expectations. If you're supposed to do something, it means it is expected for you. If you're not supposed to do something, it means it's forbidden or inappropriate. That is, I'm not really supposed to be here means it's not allowed for me to be here, or I shouldn't be here according to rules or expectations. A stowaway, a stowaway. A stowaway is someone who travels illegally, hidden from the crew and the authorities. They usually travel on a ship or aircraft or any other vehicle, and of course, without paying, they don't have a ticket. Lowered his voice. Lowered his voice. That means to speak more quietly, often in discreet or secretive. So, because you don't want to be overheard. Take something down in the notebook. Take something down in the notebook. That means to write down information or notes. You can also say write down, of course, or jot down. Jot down. Emigrated. Emigrated. That means to leave one's country to settle permanently in another one. Then used to. Used to. I used to live with my Aunt Lucy in Peru. Used to. Used to is used to describe past habits or states that no longer exist, or to describe something that was true in the past but not now. Remember that used to is a semi-modal verb, so it is followed by an infinitive without to. I used to walk a lot. I used to ride a bike. You see, walk, ride. I used to sing in the mornings. Sing. All infinitives. That means the semi-modal verb means that it has a function, but it follows the rules of past simple. As you can see, used to. Of course, in fast speech we say used to, used to. So you see that in fast speech pronunciation changes. But keep in mind that this semi-modal verb shows past already, because we talk about past actions that are not true now, or that you do rarer than you used to do them. So he used to live in Peru. It was in the past. It's not true in the present. Now he's in London. Go into a home. Go into a home. That means to move into a residential care facility, typically for elderly people or those needing special care. So, in the past and still today, elderly people who can no longer live independently might go into a home. It is often called a nursing home or care home. And there they receive assistance. Retired, that is an adjective. It means having stopped working because of age. Yeah, so his aunt is a retired bear. She is not working anymore. Moving on. Moving on. But whatever did you do for food? Asked Mr. Brown. You must be starving. Bending down, the bear unlocked the suitcase with a small key, which it also had round its neck, and brought out an almost empty glass jar. I ate marmalade, he said rather proudly. Bears like marmalade, and I lived in a lifeboat. But what are you going to do now? Said Mr. Brown. You can't just sit on Paddington Station waiting for something to happen. Oh, I shall be all right, I expect. The bear bent down to do up its case again. As he did so, Mrs. Brown caught a glimpse of the writing on the label. It said simply, Please look after this bear. Thank you. She turned appealingly to her husband. Oh, Henry, what shall we do? We can't just leave him here. There's no knowing what might happen to him. London's such a big place when you've nowhere to go. Can't he come and stay with us for a few days? Mr. Brown hesitated. But Mary, dear, we can't take him. Not just like that. After all what? Mrs. Brown's voice had a firm note to it. She looked down at the bear. He is rather sweet. And he'd be such company for Jonathan and Judy, even if it's only for a little while. They'd never forgive you if they knew you'd left him here. It all seems highly irregular, said Mr. Brown doubtfully. I'm sure there's a law about it. He bent down. Would you like to come and stay with us? He asked. That is, he added hastily, not wishing to offend the bear, if you've nothing else planned. The bear jumped and his head nearly fell off with excitement. Ooh, yes, please. I should like that very much. I've nowhere to go and everyone seems in such a hurry. Well, that's settled then, said Mrs. Brown before her husband could change his mind. And you can have marmalade for breakfast every morning, and she tried hard to think of something else that bears might like. Every morning? The bear looked as if it could hardly believe its ears. I only had it on special occasions at home. Marmalade's very expensive in darkest Peru. Then you shall have it every morning starting tomorrow, continued Mrs. Brown, and honey on Sunday. You don't mean to say. That is an exclamation used to express surprise, disbelief, or to prompt someone to confirm something extraordinary. It's like saying, Are you seriously telling me this? So it shows surprise, strong surprise. You may also say, like, are you serious, or you're kidding me. Then come all the way from. Come all the way from. We usually use it to mean to travel a very long distance from a particular place. And this is a great phrase to emphasize the huge distance traveled. So it makes the journey sound impressive. Then whatever you whatever did you do for food? Whatever did you do for food? This is an emphatic question expressing concern or surprise about how someone managed, in this case, to get food in a difficult situation. And this whatever adds emphasis to the question. So it isn't just what did you do for food? The whatever makes it stronger, and it shows shock or even concern. It's like, I can't believe it. What on earth did you do? Nowadays, you can say, what on earth? What on earth? What on earth did you eat? Or, how did you manage to get food? Right. Now, starving. Starving is suffering or dying from hunger or extremely hungry. You must be starving. You must be starving. In this case, we use must for deduction. So, must is used to express a strong logical deduction or conclusion based on evidence. We have no idea what Paddington was eating while traveling in a lifeboat. So we assume that he must be starving. We observe that Paddington's long journey and lack of food, and logically conclude that he has to be hungry. So in this case, you use must be. Must be. Bring out. Bring out. It means to take something out from inside a place or container. Then marmalade. Marmalade. I'm sure that you understand it, but there is also jam. So I decided to explain the difference between marmalade and jam. So marmalade is a preserve made from citrus, especially from oranges, in which the peel is suspended, and it might be slightly bitter. It might give off a slightly bitter taste. But jam is a preserve made from the pulp of fruit, like berries or stone fruits, boiled with sugar, sweetener, and without large pieces of peel. And the main difference is in the fruit used and the texture. So marmalade must be citrus, like oranges, lemons, grapefruit, and so on. But jam, fruit, strawberries, raspberries, and so on. And so Paddington prefers and loves marmalade. I shall be all right, I expect. I shall be all right, I expect. In older or more formal English, shall was used with I and we to form the future tense. It also expresses determination or promise, but here it is polite way of saying I will. I will. And then the phrase I expect means I suppose, or like I think it's probable, or I believe. So in fact, Paddington says, I will be fine, I think. So he's being polite and perhaps a little bit uncertain. He's not confident. To do up its case. To do up. To do up means to fasten, close, or secure something, like maybe a case, a coat, or shoelaces. So when you do up a case, you close it and fasten with claps or zipper. So you may do up your jacket, or you may do up your shirt that has buttons. So you do up. Catch a glimpse of. Catch a glimpse of. That is to see something or someone for a very brief time. It's like imagining seeing something quickly out of the corner of your eye, or seeing something just seconds before it disappears. Like turn appealingly. Turn appealingly. It means to turn and look in a way that shows you want help or sympathy or something else. You do it in a pleading manner, like, oh, please. So if a child wants a toy, they might turn appealingly to their parent. There's no knowing. There's no knowing. it is impossible to know. It basically means nobody can know it, or it is impossible to tell. Hesitated, hesitated, that is to pause or delay in acting, speaking, or deciding because of uncertainty or doubt that you have. After all, after all. After all means in spite of any indications or expectations to the contrary, or it is also used to emphasize a reason or explanation. So here it means considering everything, or when you think about it, like I'll help him, after all, he's just a bear. I'll help him considering everything, he's just a bear. Or I'll help him when you think about it, he's just a bear. So you may use after all, or considering everything, or when you think about it. All of them are perfect here. For a little while, that means for a short period of time. They'd never forgive you if they knew you'd left him here. They'd never forgive you if they knew you'd left him here. A lot to talk about because this is the second type of conditional, conditional too. It is often used to talk about hypothetical situations. So we imagine them, imagining consequences. They'd never forgive you basically means they would never forgive you. This is the main clause, and it refers to a hypothetical consequence. His children would never forgive him if they knew you'd left him here. If they knew you had left him here. The if clause refers to a hypothetical condition. So, if they knew he had left the bear, we imagine it on this condition, on the condition they find out, or they found out, he had left the bear, Paddington, at the station, they would, and that is the consequence of this situation, never forgive him. Never forgive. It all seems highly irregular. Irregular here means not normal, not following the rules, and highly emphasizes how much it's not normal. So it is very unusual and probably against the rules. Hastily, that is with excessive speed or urgency, like quickly and often carelessly. So if you do something hastily, you do it quickly because you are in a hurry. Offend. Offend. That means to cause someone to feel upset, annoyed, or angry. So if you say something rude, you might offend someone and you may make them feel bad or disrespected. Fall off. Fall off. That is about a hat here. And it means to become detached from something and drop to the ground. We also use it when we talk about a bicycle. I fell off the bicycle. You are on the bicycle, you fall off. Or horse, fall off. Or a hat. Whenever something is on and then it goes onto the ground, it falls off. I should like that. I should like that. It actually means I would like that. I would like that. I should like that is a polite and slightly formal way of saying I want that or I would be pleased with that. And should is used here as a polite alternative to would. In modern English, should is not used in this case. People normally say I would like or I'd like for politeness, but I should like is traditional British English that you may hear, by the way, in Bridgerton. They use it a lot, and you can learn it in my other video. Here is the link. That's settled then. That's settled then. This is an expression that is used to indicate that a decision has been made or an agreement has been reached or the problem has been resolved. Yes, so it basically means, okay, the decision is made, we've agreed, and it signals the end of discussion. Change one's mind. Change one's mind, that is to alter one's opinion or decision. So if you decide to go to the cinema, but then hear about some awesome party and you choose to go there instead, you change your mind. On special occasions. On special occasions, that means for important or unusual events. It's not everyday occurrences. A worried expression came over the bear's face. Will it cost very much? He asked. You see, I haven't very much money. Of course not. We wouldn't dream of charging you anything. We shall expect you to be one of the family, shan't we, Henry? Mrs. Brown looked at her husband for support. Of course, said Mr. Brown. By the way, he added, if you are coming home with us, you'd better know our names. This is Mrs. Brown, and I'm Mr. Brown. The bear raised its hat politely twice. I haven't really got a name, he said. Only a Peruvian one, which no one can understand. Then we'd better give you an English one, said Mrs. Brown. It'll make things much easier. She looked around the station for inspiration. It ought to be something special, she said thoughtfully. As she spoke, an engine standing in one of the platforms gave a loud whistle and let off a cloud of steam. I know what, she exclaimed. We found you on Paddington Station, so we'll call you Paddington. Paddington, the bear repeated it several times to make sure. It seems a very long name. Quite distinguished, said Mr. Brown. Yes, I like Paddington as a name. Paddington it shall be. Mrs. Brown stood up. Good. Now, Paddington, I have to meet our little daughter Judy of the train. She's coming home from school. I'm sure you must be thirsty after your long journey, so you go along to the buffet with Mr. Brown and he'll buy you a nice cup of tea. All right. A worried expression came over. Come over. Come over. It means to suddenly appear on someone's face, and we use it for emotions or expressions. So it means the worried expression suddenly appeared on Bear's face. You can see it. Then we wouldn't dream of. We wouldn't dream of. It means it's absolutely out of the question. In this way, it's an emphatic way to say that one would never consider doing something, as it would be inappropriate. So you can say we would never, or we would never even consider it, or we wouldn't dream of. We wouldn't dream of. Charge someone something. Charge someone something means to ask for a particular amount of money for goods or services. So when a shop charges you for an item, they tell you the price you have to pay. And here it means Paddington is asking for money. You'd better. You'd better. You'd better know our names. You had better is a strong recommendation or warning, suggesting that there will be some negative consequences if the advice is not followed. So it means it would be advisable for you to know our names, otherwise, it won't be good. Like, I wouldn't say that would be some legal issue for Paddington, but generally it won't be good. You'd better know our names. By the way, you would see this phrase, you'd better, many, many times in this book. Make things easier. Make things easier. It means to simplify a situation or a task, reduce difficulty. Ought to be, ought to be. It means probable or expected, and also indicates some advisable thing. It is the synonym of should, but ought to is less used nowadays. Like you would rarely hear it. Should, use should. An engine standing in one of the platforms. An engine is the part of a train that produces power to make it move. So it refers to the front part of the train. Let off a cloud of steam. Let off means to release something of a gas or a loud noise. For example, here a steam engine lets off steam. It is releasing it into the air, but a person might let off a sigh like, I let off a sigh. Distinguished. Distinguished is successful, authoritative, or commanding great respect. It usually describes someone elegant, respected, and someone that has an air of importance. Thirsty, that is feeling a need to drink. Buffet. I'm sure that you know this is a self-service meal consisting of several dishes from which guests serve themselves. The main concern is the pronunciation. It's buffet. Buffet. By the way, in the context of a train station, a buffet is a small cafe with refreshments. You can buy their drinks and snacks. Paddington licked his lips. I'm very thirsty, he said. Seawater makes you thirsty. He picked up his suitcase, pulled his hat down firmly over his head, and waved a paw politely in the direction of the buffet. After you, Mr. Brown. Er, thank you, Paddington, said Mr. Brown. Now, Henry, look after him, Mrs. Brown called after them. And for goodness sake, when you get a moment, take that label off his neck. It makes him look like a parcel. I'm sure he'll get put in a luggage van or something if a porter sees him. The buffet was crowded when they entered, but Mr. Brown managed to find a table for two in a corner. By standing on a chair, Paddington could just rest his paws comfortably on the glass top. He looked around with interest while Mr. Brown went to fetch the tea. The sight of everyone eating reminded him of how hungry he felt. There was a half-eaten bun on the table, but just as he reached out his paw, a waitress came up and swept it into a pan. You don't want that, dearie, she said, giving him a friendly pat. You don't know where it's been. Paddington felt so empty, but he didn't really mind where it had been, but he was much too polite to say anything. Well, Paddington, said Mr. Brown as he placed two steaming cups of tea on the table and a plate piled high with cakes. How's that to be going on with? Paddington's eyes glistened. It's very nice, thank you, he exclaimed, eyeing the tea doubtfully. But it's rather hard drinking out of a cup. I usually get my head stuck, or else my hat falls in and makes it taste nasty. Mr. Brown hesitated. Then you'd better give your hat to me. I'll pour the tea into a saucer for you. It's not really done in the best circles, but I'm sure no one will mind just this once. Paddington removed his hat and laid it carefully on the table while Mr. Brown poured out the tea. He looked hungrily at the cakes, in particular at a large cream and jam one which Mr. Brown placed on a plate in front of him. There you are, Paddington, he said. I'm sorry they haven't any marmalade ones, but they were the best I could get. I'm glad I emigrated, said Paddington, as he reached out a paw and pulled the plate nearer. Do you think anyone would mind if I stood on the table to eat? And we will stop here. So he pulled his hat down firmly. That means that he used force to move his hat downwards so that it sits tightly and securely on the head. That's the difference with just put on. You just put it on, and then when you pull it down firmly, you don't want it to go anywhere. Called after them. To call after someone means to shout or speak loudly to someone who is moving away in order to get their attention. For goodness sake, for goodness sake. This is an exclamation expressing impatience or urgency, and it is a milder version of for God's sake. For God's sake. You can also hear for heaven's sake. For heaven's sake. A parcel, that is a package. When you buy something online, it arrives as a parcel. Makes him look like. Makes him look like. It means to cause someone or something to appear in a certain way. It means to give you a specific impression. So in this case, we're talking about a label that creates the impression that Paddington is like a teddy bear, like a parcel. A table for two, that is a table specifically designed or set up to accommodate only two people. In a restaurant, you may ask a table for two, a table for three, a table for four, a table for 10, or a larger group. Manage to find. So manage to do something means to succeed in doing something, especially when this something is difficult or after trying hard. Yeah, so it implies here that finding a table wasn't easy, but they eventually succeeded because Mr. Brown found a table for two. Rest his paws, that is, place his paws down in a relaxed or supportive manner. So just as humans, we rest our arms or rest our feet. Fetch tea, to fetch tea. To fetch something means to go and get something and bring it back. In this case, it is tea. So if you fetch something, you go where it is, pick it up, and then bring it to where it's needed. Just as he reached out his paw, just as, we're interested in just as, it means at the precise moment that, or like simultaneously, at the same time, like almost at the same time. Swept into a pan, that is to quickly move something into a pan, to clear it away. So you can imagine clearing crumbs from a table with your hand into a small dustpan. That is sweeping it into a pan. Not necessarily with the hand, of course. You can do that with a cloth. Give a friendly pat. Give a friendly pat. That is to touch someone or something lightly and repeatedly with an open hand in a gentle or friendly way. Like, I don't have anyone here to show. Dearie, dearie. That is an older informal term of endearment, like dear or sweetheart. It can be friendly, but sometimes it sounds a bit old-fashioned, like honey, sweetie. By the way, it can come off as patronizing from strangers. I personally don't like when people call me dear, honey, sweetie, something like that. He didn't really mind. He didn't really mind. Like, he wasn't particularly bothered or upset by something. Like, it means he was okay with it. Yeah, he didn't cause him any significant trouble. He was much too polite. Much too polite. So too plus adjective means more than is desirable or accepted. It indicates an excess of this quality, and it already has a negative meaning. Yeah, so Paddington was so polite that it prevented him from speaking up. The politeness was to an excessive degree and it limited his action. So, two steaming cups. That is, two cups filled with hot liquid from which steam is visibly rising. Steam indicates that this liquid is hot. Place cups of tea on the table. Place, that means to put them down gently and carefully onto the table. Piled high with, that is stacked in a tall heap. Imagine a mount of buns, like literally a mount of buns. It means there are many and they are all stacked up. How's that to be going on with? How's that to be going on with? That is slightly informal British English. That is a slightly informal British English phrase asking if a certain amount or selection of something is sufficient to start with or for the immediate future. So it's like asking, is this enough for you to start, in this case, eating now? Or will this satisfy you for the time being? So it's like offering an initial amount. Like, is it enough to start? Will this do for now? Glistened, that is shine with a soft, sparkling light. Eyeing the tea doubtfully. Eyeing the tea doubtfully. To eye is used as a verb here. It means to look at the tea and then doubtfully with suspicion. He's uncertain, Paddington is uncertain or he's hesitating. He's looking at it this way because his head usually gets stuck or his hat falls. So, of course, it's inconvenient. Then hesitate, that is to pause or delay in acting, speaking, or deciding because of uncertainty or doubt. A saucer, it's a small plate that goes under a cup. It is usually used to catch spills or hold a spoon. Just this once. Just this once means on this single occasion. It's like I'll allow it this time, but don't expect it again. The next one. Do you think anyone would mind if I stood on the table to eat? Do you think anyone would mind? This is a polite, indirect question, a polite way to ask for permission. It softens the direction of would anyone mind? It's still polite. Then mind if I plus past simple. Mind if I stood on the table. This is the common structure for politely asking if someone would be bothered by this action. Mind if I did something. And of course, stood on the table, the act of placing one's feet on the surface of the table. Moving on. Before Mr. Brown could answer, he had climbed up and placed his right paw firmly on the bun. It was a very large bun, the biggest and the stickiest Mr. Brown had been able to find, and in a matter of moments, most of the inside found its way onto Paddington's whiskers. People started to nudge each other and began staring in their direction. Mr. Brown wished he had chosen a plain, ordinary bun, but he wasn't very experienced in the ways of bears. He stirred his tea and looked out of the window, pretending he had tea with a bear on Paddington Station every day of his life. Henry! The sound of his wife's voice brought him back to earth with a start. Henry, whatever you are doing to that poor bear, look at him. He's covered all over with cream and jam. Mr. Brown jumped up in confusion. He seemed rather hungry, he answered lamely. Mrs. Brown turned to her daughter. This is what happens when I leave your father alone for 5 minutes. Judy clapped her hands excitedly. Oh, Daddy, is he really going to stay with us? If he does, said Mrs. Brown, I can see someone other than your father will have to look after him. Just look at the mess he's in. Paddington, who all this time had been too interested in his bun to worry about what was going on, suddenly became aware that people were talking about him. He looked up to see that Mrs. Brown had been joined by a little girl with laughing blue eyes and long fair hair. He jumped up, meaning to raise his head, and in his haste slipped on a patch of strawberry jam which somehow or other had found its way onto the glass tabletop. For a brief moment he had a dizzy impression of everything and everyone being upside down. He waved his paws wildly in the air and then, before anyone could catch him, he somersaulted backwards and landed with a splash in his saucer of tea. He jumped up even quicker than he had sat down because the tea was still very hot and promptly stepped into Mr. Brown's cup. Let's start with the stickiest word here. Stickiest. Stickiest. This is the superlative form of sticky. It means that the bun had the most jam or syrup and was the most difficult to clean off. This bun was covered with an adhesive substance. That's why sticky. It's the stickiest bun. In a matter of moments, that is very quickly, within a very short period of time, and it emphasizes how fast something happened. So like in a matter of seconds, very quickly, almost instantly, in no time. Found its way. Found its way. That means to move or travel, often indirectly or by chance, to a particular place or position. So it implies that jam spread or moved without direct intention. I mean, does jam even have any intentions? All over Paddington. Well, first onto his whiskers. And whiskers are long, stiff hairs growing off the snout of an animal, like a cat or a bear. These are the sensory hairs that animals use to nudge each other, That is to gently push someone or something, often with one's elbow, to attract attention or hint at something. Like, look. A plain, ordinary bun. A plain, ordinary bun, that is a simple, typical bun without any special fillings, toppings, or flavors. Experience in the ways of bears. Experience in the ways of bears, that is, knowledge or skill gained from having done or seen things related to a particular subject, in this case, bears. This means they didn't know much about how bears behave or what they typically do. Stirred his tea, that is to mix a liquid by moving a spoon. Yeah, when you put sugar in your tea, you usually stir to mix the sugar. Brought him back to earth with a start. Brought him back to earth with a start. So if someone is daydreaming, like, they're in the clouds. Yeah, they are dreaming somewhere there. And then you bring them back to earth. You bring them back to earth. You make someone suddenly stop daydreaming or thinking and become aware of reality. So with a start means suddenly, suddenly, and often with a slight shock. In confusion, in confusion. If you're in confusion, you're not sure what's happening or what to do. So you might feel puzzled or disoriented. Lamely, lamely. That is in a weak, unconvincing way. So if you say something lamely, your answer or excuse is weak and not very good. It often happens because you're embarrassed or because you feel guilty. Look at the mess he's in. Look at the mess he's in. The mess he's in refers to his dirty, sticky appearance. Remember that Paddington is covered in jam and cream and whatever was there in the bun. Become aware. Become aware, that is to realize or notice something for the first time. In his haste, that is because of his hurry. Yeah, he was in a hurry. Slipped on a patch of strawberry jam. Slipped on a patch. He lost his balance because the jam made the floor slippery, and a patch is a small area. For a brief moment, that is for a very short period of time, and then a dizzy impression. A dizzy impression. If you dizzy, things seem to spin like, ooh, what is happening? So dizzy impression means he saw things in a confused and spinning way. Somersaulted backwards, that is an acrobatic movement actually. So it's when your feet go over your head and rotating backwards. Like, woof, I cannot do this trick. Landed. Come down and rest on a surface after falling or flying. So after his somersault, he came down and made contact with the floor. Promptly, that is immediately, without any delay, like right away. Yeah, he did it right away. Moving on. Judy threw back her hair and laughed until the tears rolled down her face. Oh, Mummy, isn't he funny? He cried. Paddington, who didn't think it at all funny, stood for a moment with one foot on the table and the other in Mr. Brown's tea. There were large patches of white cream all over his face, and on his left ear there was a lump of strawberry jam. You wouldn't think, said Mrs. Brown, that anyone could get in such a state with just one bun. Mr. Brown coughed. He had just caught the stern eye of a waitress on the other side of the counter. Perhaps, he said, we'd better go. I'll see if I can find a taxi. He picked up Judy's belongings and hurried outside. Paddington stepped gingerly off the table and, with a last look at the sticky remains of his bun, climbed down onto the floor. Judy took one of his paws. Come along, Paddington. We'll take you home and you can have a nice hot bath. Then you can tell me all about South America. I'm sure you must have had lots of wonderful adventures. I have, said Paddington earnestly. Lots. Things are always happening to me. I'm that sort of bear. When they came out of the buffet, Mr. Brown had already found a taxi and he waved them across. The driver looked hard at Paddington and then at the inside of his nice, clean taxi. Bears is sixpence extra, he said gruffly. Sticky Bears is ninepence. He can't help being sticky, driver, said Mr. Brown. He's just had a nasty accident. The driver hesitated. All right, open. But mind, none of it comes off on the interior. I only cleaned it out this morning. The Browns trooped obediently into the back of the taxi. Mr. and Mrs. Brown and Judy sat in the back, while Paddington stood on a tip-up seat behind the driver so that he could see out of the window. Large patches of white cream. Again, we already know that patch refers to small areas, so he had some patches of cream. A lump of strawberry jam. A lump is a solid, irregular piece of something, and it is often not spread smoothly. Get in such a state. Get in such a state. That means to become extremely upset or messy. Here, it refers to Paddington's messy, dirty condition. Coughed. Coughed. That can be done to clear the throat or as a polite way to get attention or to hide laughter. Or, of course, when people are ill, they also cough. Catch the stern eye of. Catch the stern eye of. That is to be seen by someone who is looking in a severe, serious, or strict way. The waitress was looking at him very seriously, perhaps even disapprovingly. Belongings. Belongings, these are personal items, things that belong to you. Hurried outside, that is to move quickly to leave the place. Then stepped gingerly off the table. That means to step carefully and cautiously because of fear of falling or causing damage. Earnestly, earnestly, that is seriously and sincerely. Looked hard at, that is to gaze intently and scrutinizingly at someone, like sixpence, sixpence extra. Sixpence is an old British coin worth 6 pennies. Now it is equivalent to 2.5 pence. Gruffly, gruffly. Speaking gruffly means with deep, rough voice, often sounding a bit unfriendly or impatient, like harshly, harshly, or also roughly. He can't help being sticky. He can't help being sticky. This implies that being sticky is a natural consequence for him and it's not a deliberate action. It's like he can't avoid being sticky, or it's not his fault he's sticky. A nasty accident, a nasty accident. A nasty accident is not a minor one. It implies something quite bad or unpleasant happened. None of it comes off on me interior. Actually, it should be none of it comes off on my interior. This is the taxi driver worried about the mess from Paddington getting inside his taxi. Yeah. And the me instead of my is a feature of informal or regional speech. So you may hear it a lot, a lot, a lot. It's very typical. It's not a mistake. Trooped obediently into. Trooped obediently into. That means they walked in a line or group and they followed the instructions without questioning, like soldiers. A tip-up seat. A tip-up seat. These are usually small seats that can be folded out of the way. So in old taxis, they were extra seats for passengers. Nowadays, that's fold-down seat. Fold-down seat. Moving on to the next part. The sun was shining as they drove out of the station, and after the gloom and the noise, everything seemed bright and cheerful. They swept past a group of people at a bus stop, and Paddington waved. Several people stared, and one man raised his hat in return. It was all very friendly. After weeks of sitting alone in a lifeboat, there was so much to see. There were people and cars and big red buses everywhere. It wasn't a big like darkest Peru. Paddington kept one eye out of the window in case he missed anything. With his other eye, he carefully examined Mr. and Mrs. Brown and Judy. Mr. Brown was fat and jolly with a big moustache and glasses, while Mrs. Brown, who was also rather plump, looked like a larger edition of Judy. Paddington had just decided he was going to like staying with the Browns when the glass window behind the driver shot back and a gruff voice said, "Where did you say you wanted to go?" Mr. Brown leaned forward. Number 32, Windsor Gardens. The driver cupped his ear with one hand. Continue, he shouted. Paddington tapped him on the shoulder. Number 32, Windsor Gardens, he repeated. The taxi driver jumped at the sound of Paddington's voice and narrowly missed hitting a bus. He looked down at his shoulder and glared. Cream, he said bitterly. All over me new coat. The gloom. The gloom refers to the dim light and darkness, making it hard to see clearly. Then in a taxi, they swept past a group of people at a bus stop. That means that they moved quickly and smoothly past someone. Yes, so they passed them quickly and smoothly, almost as if gliding. Carefully examined. So he didn't just glance like, He looked very closely, paying attention to every part. Jolly, that is happy, cheerful, or festive. If someone with a jolly face, jolly, that is happy and cheerful. Plump, that is having a full rounded shape, so it describes someone who is a little bit fat, but in a soft and often appealing way. The equivalent is also chubby or full-figured. Looked like a larger edition of Judy. So it means that Mrs. Brown resembled Judy. The glass window shot back. That is to open suddenly and forcefully. Lean forward, that is to move your body closer to the front, often to hear better or to speak to someone in front of people. Cupped his ear with one hand. This is the exact movement that I'm showing you. This is like when you make a funnel with your hand to direct the sound right into your ear. Tapped him on the shoulder. It means that you touch someone with your hand to get their attention. It's like, excuse me, are you getting off the bus? Or, excuse me, are you lining up? Narrowly missed hitting a bus. It was a very close call. That means that they almost hit the bus, but they managed to avoid it. So they barely missed hitting a bus. Glare, that is to look at someone with angry and intense stare. You can say give an angry stare. And moving on. Judy giggled and Mr. and Mrs. Brown exchanged glances. Mr. Brown peered at the meter. He half expected to see a sign go up saying they had to pay another 6 pence. I beg your pardon, said Paddington. He bent forward and tried to rub the stain off with his other paw. Several bun crumbs and a smear of jam added themselves mysteriously to the taxi driver's coat. The driver gave Paddington a long, hard look. Paddington raised his hat and the driver slammed the window shut again. Oh dear, said Mrs. Brown. We really shall have to give him a bath as soon as we get indoors. It's getting everywhere. Paddington looked thoughtful. It wasn't so much that he didn't like baths. He really didn't mind being covered with jam and cream. It seemed a pity to wash it all off quite so soon. But before he had time to consider the matter, the taxi stopped and the Browns began to climb out. Paddington picked up the suitcase and followed Judy up a flight of white steps to a big green door. Now you are going to meet Mrs. Bird, said Judy. She looks after us. She is a bit fierce sometimes and she grumbles a lot, but she doesn't really mean it. I'm sure you'll like her. Paddington felt his knees begin to tremble. He looked round for Mr. and Mrs. Brown, but they appeared to be having some sort of argument with the taxi driver. Behind the door, he could hear footsteps approaching. I'm sure I shall like her if you say so, he said, catching sight of his reflection on the brightly polished letterbox. But will she like me? Giggle. To giggle means to laugh lightly in a nervous, silly, or playful way. It is often uncontrollable laughter. Then exchange glances. That means to look at each other, often without speaking. So they looked at each other and thought that look they communicated perhaps surprise, amusement, or concern. They definitely had concerning look. Peered at the meter. Peered at the meter means to look carefully at the meter. The meter is a device that calculates the fare. So Mr. Brown carefully looked at this meter because he was expecting the price to go up. So he was checking the price. I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. That is the polite way to say, I'm sorry. To rub the stain off. To rub the stain off. That means to clean the mark by wiping or scrubbing it. Like imagine you have something on your t-shirt and you try to rub it off. Bun crumbs. Bun crumbs. So these are tiny pieces of bun that have broken off. A smear of jam. A smear of jam. That is a messy spread out mark of jam and not a clean drop. Slammed the window shut again. That means to close the window forcefully. Wash it all off. Wash it all off. That is remove all the dirt, jam, or cream by washing. To consider the matter, that means to think deeply about the problem or situation. Then follow Judy up a flight of white steps. Follow Judy up a flight of white steps. That is to go behind Judy. And then a flight of steps is a set of stairs leading from one floor to another. Fierce. Fierce. That is intense. It describes something wild, strong, or potentially dangerous, often with angry appearance. Grumbles. Well, that is usually about a person who complains a lot, but in low, unhappy voices. Then felt his knees begin to tremble. Felt his knees begin to tremble. This is a physical reaction to fear or anxiety where the legs feel weak and shake. And then they appeared to be having some sort of argument. Appeared to be means seemed to be, and some sort of argument suggests the specific nature of the disagreement wasn't quite clear, at least to Paddington. We know what they were arguing about. And then footsteps approaching. Footsteps, the sound of people walking. This means that I forgot the name of the housekeeper, but she was approaching. That means that she was coming nearer. And that brings us to the end of our adventure with Paddington. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share with a friend or a family member. Remember to hit that notification bell so that you wouldn't miss any other videos, any next videos. But that's it from me. Thank you for being here with me today. I'll see you in my next one. Bye!